Hello, I'm Rex Basterfield, and this is a video about my Quilcom SIM W. Like all of my synthesizers in the SIM series, it uses no samples, just synthesizer techniques, and its aim in life is to simulate a tin whistle. That was the first aim of it, but the engine, the model, can actually do a lot more in terms of simulating various types of flute sounds and woodwind instruments. So first off, a quick overview. At the top here we have the preset manager. This big panel is the main one for producing sound and controlling the sound of the instruments. A couple of delays in series, the excellent Verb 7B reverb by Martin Fickeneck, and down here the general panel just addresses tuning and bending. And next to the volume controller we have a recorder, so you can record individual sounds or short pieces up to 10 seconds, save them as WAV files and use them wherever you like elsewhere. So I've arranged the controls in 4 rows. The rows essentially do the same kind of thing. At the top we have the air, which creates the air sound of the whistle. Then we have the tone, so the tone and air are separate sound generators. We have the tuning arrangement here, where we can adjust micro tuning for different scales. Then the extras is really all about articulations, but that word was too big for the GUI, so I called it extras. Okay, so I'll go into these sections in more detail now. So first off, I'll talk about the air sound. I've turned down the mix here, so we're just listening to the air. We have a tuned comb filter which follows the pitch of the keyboard, and we can alter the resonance in 2 ways, which have a different effect on the sound. You can just get pure noise if we don't want it tuned. And then if I put the mixer over to the tone, the tone is set on this additive oscillator here. So we have the fundamental, which F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, F6, and we mix between the air and the tone sound to get the sound we want. So when we have pretty much all air, we have a kind of a pan pipe sound. In fact, I have a preset for that. And on the air section we have this fluct, which is the fluctuation amount, because when a note is played in a sustained way on a flute or whistle, you will hear variations which affect various parameters of the sound. So here we can control the amount of that fluctuation. Round about halfway sounds pretty good. So on the tone row we have this envelope amount, and this means that one of the 2 envelope generators built in modulates this mix setting here. So this is without any envelope, and if I introduce the envelope, so this kind of setting gives you a little bit of a chiff, which you sometimes hear at the start of a note. Let's make it more extreme. So that's one parameter you can adjust to control the sort of shift that you get at the start. There are two blown modes provided, blown and tongued. Tongued is when the player will do a t sound, but not the sound, but just t t t to start the sound instantaneously, and will open their mouth to stop the sound instantaneously. So tongued is this sound, blown is this sound. You'll notice some pitch bend on that, which you'll get as the breath increases and decreases. I should mention that everything here can be automated in the DAW, so you can choose some notes to be blown and some to be tongued when you're post-processing the music, should you wish to. The coloration filter is optional, and this is a static comb filter, which the idea is to make different notes have different timbres and volumes. So if I turn that on, we can increase the resonance of that filter and set the dry wet balance. So let's turn it all flat out and see what we get. So you can see that gives some variation across the scale of the whistle. Right, the next row enables you to microtune each individual note within a scale, and this microtuning will apply to all the octaves across a 5-octave range. When you press reset, the values go back to equal temperament tuning. So you can create whatever scale you want. In fact, I've got a template for just tuning, which on its own doesn't sound particularly different, but here I've got the Hanuman Toady scale preset for you. So if I just play that on the white notes, you'll hear the effect. Most simple flutes and whistles have a 1-octave diatonic range, and the second and subsequent octaves are reached by blowing harder, basically. And when you blow harder, the note timbre changes, the volume increases, and there's a tendency for the note to go sharp the higher you go in the scale. So here we can set a breakpoint, which I've got at C5, and this is the amount by which the pitch sharpens as you increase the note. It's a little bit tricky to hear, but it's reasonably authentic, I think. So that's B, and that's the breakpoint note. If you don't like the C3 octave numbering system, you can change it to C4 or even C5. And if you don't like the effect of that, you can simply take it to the top of the keyboard, in which case it won't cut in. Okay, so now we come on to the articulations, or extras as I've called them. So this one's called Overblow, and it aims to simulate the note that you get, which is a perfect fifth. If you want in, I would call a transition between the low octave, the natural octave, and the higher octave. So if I turn that on, you can then hear the effect. If I turn the chance of it happening up to maximum, the length of the sound is random, and if I turn the chance down low, it will only happen sometimes. As you can hear, and also it will not happen if you play legato. It will never happen. So if I turn the chance up to maximum, but I play legato, so that's the overblow. This section deals with ornaments, which is very popular in Irish and Celtic music, to play very brief notes to add expression to the performance. So an ornament is introduced when we exceed the threshold velocity that we set there. This is the speed at which the ornaments play. So if you're playing a fast piece, you'd want the ornaments to be faster, and the converse if you're playing a slow piece like an air. Now there are 6 ornaments built in, and you can choose from the variety control how many of those are accessible randomly. And the user guide details what those ornaments are, but for this purpose let's just do it with a tap. So if I play at a lower velocity, and then I will emphasize the third note by playing it harder. And we can have a larger variety of ornaments. And the more details about that in the user guide, but it's a way of playing fast ornaments without having to use a lot of keyboard skill. So it's good for me, and of course you can add ornamentation after you've recorded the basic piece of music, so you've got full control over that. All you do in that situation is adjust the velocity in the door for each note played. An important part of traditional flute and whistle music is pitch bending or portamento, glide. So I've provided various options for that here with the glide setting. When you have static set, all legato playing will produce a glide according to the rate that you set. So that's staccato playing, and that's legato playing, so we can set the time there. Now if we change modes to Velta glide, which is a velocity glide, this will add to the glide time according to the velocity that you play at, and this is it's such that when you play very softly you will get a longer glide time, and it will add to the setting here. So if we turn the glide time fairly low and play staccato, and then so I'm playing that second note legato and also at a low velocity. Let's turn it up a little bit more. Staccato. So that second note was played very softly, and the velocity that I actually play at will affect the glide time. So the second note there was played at different velocities, so you hear a different glide time. The other glide mode is low velocity glide, and here we set a threshold, and when we play a note below that velocity threshold, we will get a glide rate as determined by the setting on the glide rate knob. So I need to increase the rate to show that a bit better. So that's another option. before setting the glide according to the way you play the keyboard. Now I should mention, of course, that it's probably a lot easier to record the basic tune and then to put the glide on in post-processing in the DAW, using the velocity values for the notes that you want to glide. Now, if you have a electronic wind instrument, which will normally output portamento time on CC5, you can control the portamento from the instrument, from the electronic wind instrument, in which case I would suggest you set it to static, turn the glide rate down, and then you add to that minimal level on the wind instrument according to the amount that you set on this knob. You can also, of course, set that for the modulation wheel or any other controller you wish. And while we're talking about gliding, there's an additional feature on the general panel here called bend first, because if you recall, I said that only pitch bends happen when you play legato style, but what if you want the first note to bend up? With bend first on, the velocity that you play will directly influence the bend up time. So if you play soft, you can get a bend up to 1 second. If you play quickly, play hard I should say, then you don't get the bend. So that's another option for adding expression to your piece of music. Finally, on the articulations, we have Vibrato, which modulates pitch, volume to some extent, timbre, depending on the mode selected here. So blown means that the diaphragm is used by the player to alter the sound pressure, and that affects the timbre as well. So this is blown vibrato. Now vibrato will come in when you push the modulation wheel past about a third of the way, so it's not proportional, it's either on or off, which mimics the typical playing style. So if I change to fingered, this is where the player will flutter a finger over an adjacent open hole to get a sharper pitch sound. So that's quite extreme. Let's turn it down a bit. And the speed is set with the LFO knob. So when I set 4 Hz, it's a nominal value because the speed will fluctuate slightly to give hopefully a more realistic vibrato sound. And you can also use aftertouch on the keyboard if you have aftertouch, and that works whichever one you touch last, which is the mod wheel or the aftertouch. So I'll just press hard now, and then you get the finger vibrato. Going back to the general panel now, we have the option of chromatic steps, which causes any pitch bend to go up in semitone intervals. So I'm using the pitch bend wheel now. That can be useful maybe for adding other types of expression. So that's another tool in the armory for your playing. Of course we can go a bit extreme with that, and we've got a pitch bend of 1 octave there. Because this is a synthesizer that doesn't use samples, we've got a range of controls which enable us to make variations on different blown instrument sounds. For instance, this is a transverse flute sound. I've provided a couple of generic woodwind sounds. Now, whilst the SIM W was never intended to be a brass instrument simulator, you can nonetheless make settings which give quite an interesting brassy sound. So let's try this one here. You can even manipulate the settings to give something like the sound of a blown reed instrument, like the duduk. And of course you can do some daft things with it because it's a synthesizer. So there you go, that's the Quilcom SIM W. Have a look through the user guide, and I do hope you have a bit of fun with it. I'm going to play out with a little bit from the Lonesome Boatman, which is one of the most requested pieces of an Irish tin whistler. This was just a basic MIDI file, and I did all the articulations, post-processing in the DAW. So until the next time, bye!